Hello, welcome to the Cordial Reader. Since I don't have an audiobook episode to share this week, I'm recovering from 2 bouts of laryngitis, and this is at least a booktube adjacent channel. I thought I'd share an update of my reading so far this year. I chose 2 challenges for 2023, and this will seem a bit like going around in circles or, possibly even sort of a Venn diagram. But the first was to crochet 1 row a day on a temperature blanket. Now you might be wondering, why am I tearing out or frogging this whole blanket that I've started? And the reason is because of the second challenge. So I've joined a group on Instagram that shares a goal of reading 23 books in backlist books in 2023. And you'll hear about my first 2 backlist reads later. But this does lead back to why I have decided to stop and tear out, frog, my entire blanket so far. So, one of the other bookstagrammers on the backlist challenge group, she and a friend, have taken the idea of a temperature blanket project and adapted it to be a star rating project, so they can crochet 1 row for each book read with the color determined by how many stars they gave it. They're also doing a different stitch each month and have no idea how large the project will be at the end of the year. And based on how many books they read and rate, it could end up as a scarf. So that's what I'm going to do. I need to decide on yarn colors for star ratings 1 through 5, choose a stitch for January, and get started on my first 4 rows. Which brings us back around to the books I've read so far this year and the star ratings I've given them. So the first book I read, A Winter at the White Queen by Denise Weimer. It's the first in a series called Romance at the Gilded Age Resorts from Wild Heart Books. It was published on January 1st, and it is a novella. It's a Gilded Age romance that has mystery and humor, and I picked out a favorite quote, which was, "She and Aunt Florence agreed on one thing. The quicker they could find Ada's match, the better. This maneuvering, this plotting, this existence in the painful gray space between family and servant needed to end." The second book I read was The Rose and the Thistle, the newest book from Laura France. It published on the 3rd. And it's set in 1715 Scotland during the Jacobite uprisings. And it is just a gorgeous novel of romance and politics and family, faith and sacrifice. And this was my first 5-star read of the year. And I was lucky enough to be on her launch team. The third book was 450 from Paddington Station by Agatha Christie, a Miss Marple mystery, and it is my first Agatha Christie, and I read it because it's this month's comfort book read. And I loved how she was described. He knew all about Miss Marple. Everybody in St. Mary Mead knew Miss Marple, fluffy and dithery in appearance, but inwardly as sharp and as shrewd as they make them. I loved that. After these 3 books, and I'll put something here, what I listened to was A Place to Hang the Moon by Kate Albus, narrated by Polly Lee. and it was a 2021 release. Fantastic story. Set in England during World War II. 3 siblings and the preposterous plan, which is to send them to the country with a school of children that are evacuating so they can hope to find their forever family. And I loved the tributes, the allusions to past stories. I loved that they were bookish children, and that more than the difficult situations they find themselves in, the village library becomes a haven. Well worth the listen, with a great narrator. Now, next up, I'm reading Hearts of Steel by Elizabeth Camden. I was gifted this for review. I've read the prologue so far, and it tells the story of Maggie Molinaro and how she comes to have an ice cream factory. So I'm excited to see what else happens as she becomes involved with Liam Blackstone. And after that, I'll be starting on 2 backlist books, one of which is Lights Out by Natalie Walters, the first book in the Snap Agency, and it's romantic suspense from 2021. So I'm excited to start that. And then, and I'll put something here, I will be also reading a gifted ebook, A Shape on the Air by Julia Ibbotson. It's a time slip with mystery and romance, and it seems to be time travel that just happens. And there seems to be some correlation between the contemporary characters and the historic ones. Having read the beginning of A Shape on the Air, I'm anxious to get back to it. But I do need to read Hearts of Steel, and probably should read Lights Out before I do. So that's my 2023 so far in reading and in crochet. And if you'd like more content of this type, be sure to leave me a comment. And while you're here, if you want to, there's also the like and the subscribe buttons that you can hit as well.